Judy El Mayo on the left there and his son Vicente on the right have a narco pedigree that may be unrivaled in Chicago or anywhere else. Mayo, whose full name is Ismael Zambada Garcia, is the current top leader of the Sinaloa Cartel that controls a majority of illicit drugs sold in Chicago. He was named in a new federal indictment this week, underscored by what his son Vicente has told authorities over the years from a Chicago jail cell.
This dramatic moment was the beginning of the end for Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. After his long run from the law, repeatedly escaping authorities, he was now caught. He had no idea where he was being taken. In this never-before-seen video obtained by ABC News, this was the moment when the notorious drug lord learned he had landed in New York. He had been brought to the U.S. to face justice. The most wanted drug lord in the world, now bleary-eyed and bewildered. And tonight, El Chapo has now been convicted on all 10 federal charges, including drug trafficking and conspiracy to murder.
The intricate tapestry of organized crime in Mexico is woven with the stories of notorious figures whose legacies have left indelible marks on the country's history and beyond. Among these, 5 individuals stand out for their notoriety, the vast empires they built, and the profound impacts they had on the drug trade and law enforcement worldwide. From the ruthless leadership of Arturo Beltrán Leyva to the infamous escapes of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, these figures epitomize the complexity and danger of the Mexican drug war. Their stories are not merely tales of crime, but narratives that highlight the challenges of combating an industry that thrives in the shadows of society.
Mexican drug lord Arturo Beltrán Leyva is dead. Dubbed the boss of bosses, Leyva was one of Mexico's most wanted men. He was shot dead on Wednesday evening by Navy forces just 1 week after he escaped another army operation targeting him.
It was a state funeral for a man hailed as a national hero in Mexico's drug war, Marine Melquisedec Angula Cordova, who died in a daring raid last week that also took the life of perhaps the country's most powerful drug kingpin, Arturo Beltrán Leyva.
Arturo Beltrán Leyva, also known as El Barbas, was a significant figure in Mexico's criminal underworld. He was born in Sinaloa, a state in Mexico known for being the cradle of many notorious drug traffickers. Arturo, along with his brothers, initially worked closely with the Sinaloa Cartel, one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. The Beltrán Leyva brothers were key players in the cartel, contributing significantly to its operations and expansion. However, in the early 2000s, the Beltrán Leyva brothers' relationship with the Sinaloa Cartel began to sour. This tension eventually led to a split, with the Beltrán Leyva brothers forming their own organization. This new group, known as the Beltrán Leyva Organization, BLO, quickly established itself as a formidable force in the world of organized crime. The BLO engaged in a wide range of criminal activities, including drug trafficking, money laundering, kidnapping, and extortion. One of the hallmarks of the Beltrán Leyva organization under Arturo's leadership was its use of extreme violence. The BLO was known for its brutal tactics, including torturing and murdering rivals, law enforcement officers, and anyone who stood in their way. This violent approach led to numerous confrontations with other criminal groups, particularly their former allies in the Sinaloa Cartel. The split between the Beltrán Leyva organization and the Sinaloa Cartel ignited a bloody war that contributed to a significant increase in violence across Mexico. Arturo Beltrán Leyva's reign came to an end in December 2009, during a dramatic shootout with Mexican Marines in Cuernavaca, a city just south of Mexico City. This operation marked one of the most significant victories for the Mexican government in its fight against drug cartels. Arturo's death led to further fragmentation within the Beltrán Leyva organization, as various factions broke off to form their own groups or align with other cartels. Despite his demise, Arturo Beltrán Leyva's legacy continues to influence the landscape of organized crime in Mexico. The violence and tactics employed by the BLO under his leadership set a precedent for other criminal groups, contributing to the ongoing challenges Mexico faces in its efforts to combat drug trafficking and organized crime. Héctor Luis Palma Salazar, better known by his nickname El Güero, which roughly translates to blondie in English, often referring to his light hair, was a prominent figure in the Mexican drug trafficking world, particularly within the Sinaloa Cartel. His involvement in the cartel's operations played a significant role in shaping the dynamics of drug trafficking and cartel wars in Mexico. Héctor Palma Salazar began his career in drug trafficking in the 1980s. He initially worked for Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the leader of the Guadalajara Cartel, which was one of the earliest and most powerful Mexican drug cartels. Following the disintegration of the Guadalajara Cartel, Palma aligned himself with Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán and the Sinaloa Cartel, which emerged as a dominant force in the drug trafficking industry. Within the Sinaloa Cartel, Palma quickly rose through the ranks due to his loyalty, strategic acumen, and the successful orchestration of drug shipments, particularly from Colombia to the United States via Mexico. His operations contributed significantly to the cartel's wealth and power, establishing him as a key player within the organization. The drug trafficking landscape in Mexico is marked by violent conflicts among competing cartels, and Palma's life was deeply affected by these battles. In the 1990s, a rift within the Sinaloa Cartel led to a violent feud with the Tijuana Cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers. This conflict took a devastating personal toll on Palma in 1995, when his wife and children were brutally murdered in retaliation by the Tijuana Cartel, a tragic event that underscored the ruthless nature of cartel wars in Mexico. In 1995, Palma was arrested by Mexican authorities after a plane he was traveling in crashed, and he was subsequently extradited to the United States, where he faced charges related to drug trafficking. He served a sentence in the US before being sent back to Mexico to face additional charges. His incarceration marked a significant downturn in his influence within the Sinaloa Cartel and the broader landscape of Mexican organized crime. Héctor Luis Palma Salazar's life story is emblematic of the complex interplay between drug trafficking, cartel violence, and personal tragedy. His rise and fall within the Sinaloa Cartel illustrate the volatile nature of the drug trade in Mexico and the personal risks involved in such a criminal enterprise. Despite his arrest and the setbacks faced by the Sinaloa Cartel, the organization has continued to be a major player in the drug trafficking world, adapting to changes in leadership and continuing its operations both within Mexico and internationally. Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, often referred to as the Godfather of Mexican drug trafficking, was a seminal figure in the evolution of the drug trade in Mexico. His leadership of the Guadalajara Cartel during the 1980s marked a significant turning point in the organization and operation of drug trafficking in the country, setting the stage for the modern era of Mexican cartels. Félix Gallardo was born in Culiacán, Sinaloa, Mexico, a region that would later become synonymous with drug trafficking. Initially, he worked as a Mexican federal judicial police agent, a position that gave him critical insights into law enforcement operations and methodologies. This background, combined with his cunning and ambition, facilitated his eventual pivot into the world of drug trafficking. In the early 1980s, Félix Gallardo founded the Guadalajara Cartel, one of the first and most powerful drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. Unlike previous operations, which were more fragmented and less organized, the Guadalajara Cartel functioned with a level of coordination and strategy akin to a multinational corporation. Félix Gallardo was instrumental in forging alliances with other traffickers and in establishing the primary drug trafficking routes from Mexico to the United States. Under Félix Gallardo's leadership, the Guadalajara Cartel diversified its operations in dealing with various drugs. He was particularly innovative in establishing a network of complicit law enforcement and government officials, ensuring protection for his operations through bribery and corruption. This model of integrating cartel activities with elements of the state apparatus would become a hallmark of Mexican drug trafficking organizations. The Guadalajara Cartel's dominance was challenged by internal conflicts and external pressures, including increased law enforcement scrutiny from both Mexico and the United States. The watershed moment came with the abduction, torture, and murder of D-Agent Enrique Kiki Camarena in 1985, an act that significantly intensified U.S. efforts to combat the Mexican drug trade. Following this incident, the cartel began to fragment, and Félix Gallardo was eventually arrested in 1989. Even after his arrest, Félix Gallardo's influence persisted. From prison, he reportedly orchestrated the division of his empire among his lieutenants, leading to the formation of several cartels that still operate today, including the Sinaloa, Tijuana, and Juarez cartels. His strategies and organizational structures have had a lasting impact on the drug trafficking landscape in Mexico. Félix Gallardo's life story is a testament to the complexities of the drug trade, highlighting the interplay between crime, law enforcement, and politics. His legacy is one of innovation and infamy, having laid the groundwork for the subsequent generations of cartels that continue to affect Mexico and the broader international community.
76-year-old Ismael Zambada, who goes by El Mayo, has assumed the Sinaloa throne and acts as overlord of the cartel that has dominated drug sales in Chicago for years, controlling 80% of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl sales here. El Mayo, under indictment in Chicago for 15 years, a career fugitive with a $15 million U.S. bounty on his head, is now facing this new U.S. indictment in New York.
Ismael El Mayo's Zambada is a notoriously elusive figure in the world of organized crime and a key leader within the Sinaloa Cartel, one of the most powerful and pervasive drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. With a career in the narcotics trade that spans several decades, Zambada has managed to avoid capture, making him one of the most enduring figures in the drug war. Ismael Zambada was born in El Alamo, Sinaloa, Mexico, a state known for being a hotbed of drug trafficking activity. He began his career in the drug trade in the 1970s, initially involving himself in the trafficking of various drugs. Over the years, Zambada's operations expanded to include a wide range of narcotics, with a vast network that extended across the Americas and into Europe and Asia. Zambada's strategic acumen and deep connections within the narcotics trade have made him an invaluable asset to the Sinaloa Cartel. Often described as a key architect of the cartel's operations, he has been involved in planning and executing some of the cartel's most significant trafficking routes and strategies. His ability to navigate the complex landscape of Mexican organized crime, coupled with his low-profile approach to leadership, has allowed him to maintain a significant degree of influence within the cartel. One of the most remarkable aspects of Zambada's career is his ability to remain at large, despite extensive efforts by both Mexican and U.S. authorities to apprehend him. He has attributed his longevity in the trade to his cautious approach, avoiding the ostentatious displays of wealth and power that have led to the downfall of many of his contemporaries. His elusiveness has contributed to a somewhat mythical status, with some speculating about the extent of his connections within law enforcement and government. Zambada's family has also been involved in the cartel's operations, with several of his children and relatives holding positions within the organization. This has, at times, made his family a target for law enforcement and rival cartels alike. The dynamics of the Zambada family within the Sinaloa Cartel highlight the often familial nature of drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. Ismael El Mayo's Zambada's impact on the drug trafficking landscape in Mexico and beyond is significant. Under his guidance, the Sinaloa Cartel has continued to be a dominant force in the narcotics trade, despite the capture of other high-profile leaders like Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. Zambada's continued freedom and operational success make him a figure of ongoing interest and concern for authorities, and a subject of intrigue in discussions about the future of the Sinaloa Cartel and the drug trade in Mexico.
This is the moment Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán makes the Mexican government look ridiculous. Pacing up and down in his cell, calmly, waiting. These are the last images of Guzmán before he makes the most daring escape in recent history.
On this quiet residential street in the Sinaloa state capital of Culiacan, with a school just across the street, is one of 5 Chapo Guzman safe houses. Beneath this bathtub, a secret tunnel. So if you climb down the steps, you find yourself in the tunnel itself, and you can see it's been quite carefully constructed out of wood. You have to crouch a little bit, but you're quite mobile, and there's an electricity system running throughout it. The nearest other safe house from here is 3 kilometers in this direction. The constructed part of the tunnel ends here, and if you go through this door, you find yourself in the sewage system of Culiacan, an ideal escape route. And the tunnel system comes out right here in another safe house just down the road.
Everyone was silent when El Chapo decided to give those statements. Essentially, for 15 minutes, he began by thanking his wife, his 2 children, his attorneys, his paralegals. But then he went into saying that he had to bear torture for the last 30 months. He said that he was denied sanitary water, fresh water, sunlight, things that were making his head, his ears, his throat hurt. He said, I have not been able to see my wife, visit my wife, hug my children. He said this was the most inhumane conditions I've ever experienced.
Rob, this is an uphill battle for El Chapo, but the man nicknamed Shorty tonight is in a do-or-die situation. The convicted Sinaloa Cartel boss, who was responsible for 80% of Chicago's illegal drug trade, trying to do something that would convince a court he was wronged by U.S. prosecutors or die in prison on a life sentence for racketeering conspiracy. In this English translation filed today and obtained by the I-Team, Chapo says prison authorities are preventing him from receiving attorney documents for new court motions. They always use the excuse that it's because Guzmán fled from a Mexican prison, he writes. This is a ridiculous claim used to justify the anomalies. He didn't just flee from one Mexican prison. In 2015, El Chapo escaped via this jailhouse trap door through an underground tunnel on a motorcycle and out the other end. And in 2001, he also escaped from a different Mexican prison. Months after the most recent escape, Chapo was recaptured following a shootout with Mexican commandos who'd hunted him down, and he was brought to the U.S., where a federal jury in New York convicted him. Tonight, housed at America's most secure prison and still under indictment in Chicago, Chapo claims he is being mistreated because of escape fears.
Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán is one of the most infamous names associated with the global drug trade. His nickname, El Chapo, meaning shorty, refers to his relatively short stature, but his impact on the world of organized crime has been anything but small. As the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, Guzmán oversaw one of the most extensive and powerful drug trafficking operations in history. El Chapo was born on April 4, 1957, in La Tuna, a small community in the state of Sinaloa, Mexico, which is often considered the epicenter of Mexican drug trafficking. Guzmán's foray into the drug trade began at a young age, initially working for the Guadalajara Cartel, before rising through the ranks due to his ruthless efficiency and strategic acumen. Under El Chapo's leadership, the Sinaloa Cartel reached unprecedented heights. The cartel's operations extended across the globe, with drug trafficking routes spanning from South America to Europe and Asia. The Sinaloa Cartel's success was partly due to Guzmán's innovative smuggling techniques, including the use of tunnels under the Mexico-US border, submarines, and other sophisticated methods to transport narcotics. El Chapo became known not just for his leadership of the border, submarines, and other sophisticated methods to transport narcotics cartel, but also for his dramatic escapes from maximum security prisons in Mexico. His first escape in 2001 involved hiding in a laundry cart, and after being recaptured in 2014, he famously escaped again in 2015 through a tunnel that led directly into his cell's shower area. These escapes turned Guzmán into a figure of almost mythic proportions and led to extensive manhunts. El Chapo's luck ran out when he was recaptured in 2016. His arrest was the result of extensive cooperation between Mexican and international law enforcement agencies. In 2017, he was extradited to the United States, where he faced numerous charges related to his leadership of the Sinaloa Cartel, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and involvement in organized crime. In 2019, after a high-profile trial in New York City that included dramatic testimonies from former cartel associates. Guzmán was found guilty on all counts. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison, plus 30 years, and is currently serving his sentence in a high-security federal prison in the United States. El Chapo's legacy is complex, embodying the vast reach and destructive impact of global drug trafficking. While his criminal empire brought him immense wealth and power, it also caused untold suffering through violence, addiction, and corruption. His life story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and TV series, reflecting the public's enduring fascination with his rise and fall. Despite his imprisonment, the Sinaloa Cartel remains active, illustrating the challenges of dismantling such deeply entrenched criminal networks. The sagas of these 5 Mexican gangsters underscore a larger narrative about the global impact of drug trafficking and the ongoing battle between law enforcement and organized crime. The lives of Arturo Beltrán Leyva, Héctor Luis Palma Salazar, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, and Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán are intertwined with the history of drug trafficking in Mexico and its repercussions around the world. Their stories reveal the complexities of loyalty, power, and betrayal within the cartels, as well as the immense challenges faced by those seeking to dismantle these criminal networks. As the fight against drug trafficking continues, the tales of these individuals serve as stark reminders of the resilience and adaptability of organized crime, and the ongoing need for innovative strategies to combat its reach.